Hello and welcome to part 2 of making our dragon. Today we're going to be focusing on making some real actual sculpting. So the blockout phase is more or less done. Now we are going to be working on our final model. So to start off, we're going to work a bit on the eyes. Since the eyes are so simple, they're practically done already. So we just need to finish them up. I'm thinking about whether or not I should polypaint them. And so eventually I decided that yes, I will. So we are going to bake our color and material to this subtool. So we click the mRGB option. And then we're going to go and color pick the main color of our eye. Trying to look at the reference to find a color that matches, and then we're going to hit fill object, and we do this so that the toy plastic shading material is applied permanently to the eyes, so that way when we pick another shader, another matte cap like skin shade for the rest of the model, that way we can have different material properties on different parts. Now we've turned off mRGB and just left RGB because we do not need to bake the we do not need to affect the matte cap anymore. Then we are going to mask out our pupils, hide our reference, make sure our mask is nice and circular, nice and round, and we're just simply going to paint it black with the paintbrush. The toy plastic material gives us this nice shiny surface with a big bright highlight in the middle, so it's a pretty good place to start for eyes. Now we are going to pick a shade that is slightly darker, and then we are going to lower down our RGB intensity, and we're just going to begin to polypaint to add some depth to our eyes. So I picked a color that was slightly darker and slightly more reddish. And it's like airbrushing, so here we're kind of painting the occlusion. And we've picked this more reddish color to give some blood vessel look. The style is so simple that we could have, but we won't paint in some more detailed veins and some more realistic eye features. So we're just going to shade it just a little bit to give it some depth. Picked an even darker color, and this is going to be our the more occluded part, so really the part that is the most in contact with the rest of the face. Again, just to give it some more depth. some more values to work with. Even if you can barely see it, it's better to have something there than nothing at all. We're going for the more is less, less is more. Yeah, less is more approach. Excuse me. And now I am going to group everything that is going to be sculpted at the same time. So, but for a simplicity's sake, I wanted to keep the lower jaw separate from the rest of the body. So I hid the lower jaw and then grouped everything together. But now I was thinking that maybe that tail is going to be problematic because there's too much, it's too much in contact with the rest of the body. So I'm going to hide the jaw and the tail, and then I'm going to group everything together. That way, once we dynameshed again, we are going to have only 3 groups left. I could have dynameshed the jaw with the rest of the body, but I figured it would be more simple. It would be easier to it would be easier to work with if I didn't have to merge it together, since it's going to be a different color from the rest of the body, and having them in 2 pieces makes a much cleaner, a much nicer separation. Because when you merge together when you merge together the parts, when you dynamesh, even if you have a nice crease, it's still a crease, not a real separation. So keeping them more separated for a bit longer, it's easier. It's a much nicer look. So we're going to increase our Dynamesh resolution, since now we've finished our blockout port. And yeah, we're going to jump into more detailed sculpting. Just color picking the body color just to be inspired, just to have a much nicer idea of where this is going. Going to work on that beak. Going to clean it up and work out some of the transitions and faces. Hard polish is really my go-to brush to create planes. And the hard polish brush tries to make a plane, tries to average out the surface. So if you go around a curve, it will try to average out that curve. So if you need a curve to transition into a much harsher turn, hard polish will try to ease that transition. And now we are going to attack the real big difficult part of our model. So I sped up that portion. I sped up a few portions of this video because it's essentially doing the same thing over and over again. So the principle will be the same for all these tiny portions. So here we are masking, we're making circular masks, and then using the move tool we are extruding those circles. And that's how we are going to make our scale. So we're working from the middle out, from the middle of the head, and working our way out. So that way we have a bit of layering happening. Those scales are really the most difficult part, and it's something that is more it's trickier to do inside of ZBrush Core. So we have to, since we have less options, we have to be a bit more, we have to think about it more. And this is really yeah, this is the most complicated part. It's the thing you really wanna sell. So this the entire modeling of this character took 3 hours, I think. Yeah, three sessions of 1 hour. If you really wanted to polish and make it really finished, yeah, I would probably spend another 2 or 3 hours just working on those scales, because it's really the most detailed and complicated part. Here I changed my focal shift a bit intentionally, because the lower you go with your focal shift, the less fall off you have, so the cleaner your mask. So for my mask tool, since I wanted to make more precise circles, I lowered my focal shift. So now we're going to do exactly the same thing to pull out those spikes in the back and on the tail. So make a mask, invert your mask, and then use the move tool to pull it out. And when we're going to dynamesh the model again, it will clean all, because when you pull that geometry, you'll have a lot of distorted polygons. But when we dynamesh, that's the beauty of dynamesh, is we are going to clean those stretched polygons. You can see a lot of stretching here going on. Dynamesh, smooth it out, and you're good to go. So now we've roughed in our scales, but they still look like tubes. So we're going to go over all of them that became too thin, since we were moving them at a very steep angle. They became very thin, so we're going to go over them with the inflate tool just to bulge them up, so when we dynamesh it gives us a much cleaner look. With the Damien Standard brush here, we are starting to sculpt in the scales and the way they flow inside of the head, into the head. So now we've made all these tubes. Now we need to actually sculpt them and try to make them flow and work inside the skull. And you can see here the horns are going to hide a lot of them, but we're still going to try our best to work on them. I'm going to make our nose So we're going to use almost the same process. We're going to mask the shape we want to carve in. Then we're going to invert the mask. I'm going to use the clay brush with Alt to start and sculpt in, and then I'm going to move the results inwards to finish it. And you can see a lot of stretching happening here, but we're going to clean that up. A bit of smooth. Then you can go with the hard polish brush and really clean, if you wanted to have a very, very clean edge. Now we're going to start sculpting those scales, so we need to increase our resolution again. Save. Then with the clay buildup, it's another sped up part. We're going to go over as many scales as possible and try to actually sculpt them in. And try to break the tube-like shape and try to make them longer to gradually flow inside the skull. Some of them were very, very tube-like, so we're going over them with the pinch tool to taper the ends and make them a little bit pointier. You can see that some of these scales have started merging together. That's because they were too close together, and when we Dynamesh merged. When two pieces are too close together, it tends to mash them together. But it's not a big deal. Here with hard polish, trying to define some of the shapes, trying to give some planes, make them maybe sharper in the middle. Anything we can do to break that blobby tube they were made of, the better. Using the move tool, trying to see if I can fix some of them. Clay buildup to fix those transitions. With the clay buildup, we want to make them longer than we initially modeled in. Now we're going to start and add some fake scale, some extra detail, because when we look at the front view, you can see a lot of the scales from the front view. So we want to have that showing a bit. So clay buildup, we're going to start and add some fluff. Now we're going to try and clean up the rest of the body, trying to move everything more or less at the same time. Now we're going to work on the hands. So with the hard polish, we are going to try and work in all those planes. And then with these planes we've put in, we're going to use the move topo to square them off and try to get the shape we want. Here we're working in those knuckles. Here with the move tool, I'm looking at the hand from every angle, and I'm trying to make it look good from every angle. The not really the actual detail, but the silhouette. And that corner was a bit too strong, too pronounced. Since we have a lot of geometry, it creates a lot of a blobbiness when we move. But we're just trying to be in the ballpark of what we want, and then with hard polish, we're going to clean all those lumps we've created. But yeah, you want to focus on the contrast between your hand and the gray background to really look at the silhouette, look at the volume of your hand. And if the silhouette roughly looks like a hand, then you're in pretty good shape. Then you can start working on those details later on. Now we're starting working on those fingers. We're trying to square them off. Go around our hand. Now with the diamond sander brush, like when we're going to finish what we started in the first blockout video, so we're essentially drawing in all our lines. So if this was a 2D drawing, this would be our lines. So we're carving in our fingers. the inside of the palm is way too thick, so we're bringing it down. That plane is not working at all, so hard polish it. That first finger, index finger, was missing a bit of volume, so with clay buildup we're trying to bring some of that volume back in. Fingers, it's like hands and fingers, it's something you can spend a lot of time working on. And now for the scope of this model, and at the distance you're going to be looking at it, you have to take a step back and look at it and see where you are. Going to add that belly line. It's we're going to work on our feet. I wasn't sure on the actual number of toes, so it looked like there were 2. So we're gonna make 2. Consume. It's 2. There's a lot of it's an uneven plane on the sole of the feet, but we're going to fix that later on, so it's not a big problem. So if there's a bit of a warble, blobbiness happening under the feet, it's not a big problem. We're going to fix that later. Hard polish to clean those planes, make them nice. Excuse me. Here we're trying to work our transitions, so you can see the ankle, the way the ankle flowed inside the feet was very was too pronounced. So using hard polish will try to solve that for us and trying to make an even plane where we sculpt, so that it's really useful to work on those transitions. You can use a trim dynamic, but I find that I have less control. It's a more drastic effect. Excuse me, as I hit the mic and kill everybody still watching this video. And something is happening, apparently off screen. Should have sped that up as well. And we're back. Or not. Yes, we're back. Now jumping back to the horns. We're going to subdivide with Control D a couple of times to have enough geometry. And then we're going to start and break the shape a bit more. Apparently not, we're moving. Touching the eyes way too much, so I'm bringing them back inside the skull. Should have done it at a lower resolution. Since we're not using Dynamesh on this part, we can go back in resolution and work on our lower polygon. So now with clay buildup, we're going to break our horn shape, make it a bit more organic. So we're making a few strokes, then smoothing them down. Just want to introduce a bit of bumpiness. And now with the diamond standard brush, we're going to carve in those transitions. I'm going to increase my lazy mouse, so that way I have something a bit cleaner and more consistent. Smoothing the end of our cut to make the transition a bit nicer. Then I'm going over our cuts with the pinch tool to bring them closer together, make it a bit of a sharper cut. Now I'm going to pick the matte cap skeleton. Going to pick a light color, and then we're going to use mRGB, and we're going to start and polypaint the horns. Set our RGB intensity back to 100, and there we've baked our skeleton material that seemed appropriate for the horns. Same thing, we're trying to give some depth to our model. So we're actually shading the underside of the horns, but we've lowered the RGB intensity, so we have something a little bit more subtle with a lot more control. So it's not something that is going to actually show up a great deal on the model. But since we're working with 3D and we might render it, and then there'll be shadows, an ambient occlusion pass, and all of those, all the things you can do with rendering, we don't want to add too much shading information inside our polypaint. But we do want to give it some depth, so it's not something completely flat. So it's like the horns were more bleached by the sun on the top, so it's they're lighter. They have a lighter shade on top. Now with the pinch brush, I'm going over the scales again, and I'm trying to make them pop. Excuse me. Really trying to, with the pinch brush, trying to define those planes, the ones we've started working on with the hard polish brush. Started grabbing the scale on the side, so undo, smooth it out. Going over all those scales and trying to clean them up, essentially. This is the most time-consuming part, and even here on this entire video, we've only spent maybe 15 minutes working on the scales. So, yeah, definitely something you would spend a lot of time. We just want to make it sure it looks pretty good when you're looking at it from a distance, because it's the how you're going to look at the body, at the sculpt the most of the time. So this is what we're aiming for on the scope of this video. If you're working on something where you're going to make a big close-up on your character, you want to make sure that that part you're showing up full screen, and it's going to be huge. You're going to take a big part of that screen. You want to make sure it looks good for what you're going to be aiming for. So here we're going for a full body shot. So the level of detail has to be good for the full body shot. So everything is going to be more or less okay. But if you start looking at it in detail in full screen and only look at some parts, then they're going to start to break apart. But that's not what we're aiming for, so it's not a big problem. So now we're going to add those pants we forgot to add in our blockout part. So we're going to use cylinders to block it out. Simple as that. Append the cylinder, move it into position. Then we are going to insert another couple of cylinders to make the all the parts covering the legs. And we do not have enough geometry to insert them. And so I subdivided a couple of times, and then I need to delete the lower subdivisions, turn on symmetry, and that way we have enough polygons to insert our primitives. Excuse me. So it's the same thing as the blockout part. We're going to insert primitives, move them to position, and then with our sculpting tools we are going to move them, deform them to what we need, and then dynamesh together. Switching between move and move topo, between the if I need to move everything together or just parts. Now we haven't dynameshed yet, so that way we still have everything we need. Hit dynamesh, increase the resolution. And then we are going to smooth it out, clean it up. Increase our resolution again. Now that we've cleaned it, most of it out, dynamesh again. Now we have a bit more geometry. Clean all those facets out. Clay buildup, we are going to sculpt some of that missing geometry. I'm trying to work our transitions in. Starting to add a bit of a flow to the cloth. Cleaning that middle part. Hopefully by this summer we'll have videos without the sore throat. Hopefully. Then in standard we're carving and then smoothing out those transitions. So the it's like the memory of the fold is there. And we're about done for this part of this video. And the next one will be working our way, finishing the polypaint, finishing the model, cleaning up every loose ends we can find, and wrapping this little monster up. So I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed this video. Really sorry for the sore throat, the coughing and all that. If you enjoy these longer formats, please do say so. If you don't, please do say so as well. If you do like him, don't forget to hit that like button, share, subscribe if you want to see more videos. We'll have longer, shorter formats. We'll talk about different subjects. We'll tackle on different styles. Here we're working on this stylized dragon character. Probably we'll do more human character next. Maybe inside of Zbrush, maybe inside of Zbrush Core. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next week in the final part of our making dragon. Until then, have a nice week.